Live from our 7 Tasmania studios, your nightly news with Kim Miller begins now.
Good evening, everyone. Tasmanians have stopped to remember a devastating moment in our history when a mass shooting at Port Arthur occurred, sending shockwaves across the world. Tonight, we take a look at how the victims, survivors and their families were honoured at the very site where the tragedy took place 25 years ago.
35 lives lost, 23 others injured. Flowers thrown into this memorial pool as a community gathers to remember that fatal day here at the Port Arthur historic site, changing Tasmania and Australia forever.
25 years and the pain is still palpable. Our lives changed forever that day due to a despicable act of unimaginable violence.
Laying wreaths for the victims from Tasmania and beyond, gunned down in a terrifying attack on April 28, 1996, recognising the harrowing loss and mental scars still fresh today, with a minute's silence. And an emotional music tribute for victims, survivors and their loved ones.
This day means something so profound. We commemorate those who died and those who were injured. Today is a day for us to reflect on what happened,
while acknowledging the courage shown by emergency crews.
We are here also to pay homage to all those people who showed bravery to help in any way they could, all the health workers and the police.
The state's leaders also offering their heartfelt messages.
Those that lost their lives, those that had their lives changed, those that had their hearts broken. It's a difficult day.
The community still feels the profound impacts, whether they were on the peninsula, whether they had family there, whether they were first responders.
The tragedy here still remains the country's worst mass shooting by a single person, a devastating piece of history we will surely never forget.
And that's what the historic site is all about. It's about sort of empathy to the events of the past.
That day may be in our past, but it's one we'll always remember. Ruby Kamane, 7 Tasmania News.
The Port Arthur massacre changed Australia forever. It remains the country's worst mass shooting by a single person. Those who witnessed the tragedy and felt the sheer devastation, and those who responded with swift action, reflect on Tasmania's darkest day.
For Peter James, the pain is still raw.
It's just a period of sadness. It's and I've never been back to Port Arthur, but the reminder brings it back to you.
As an experienced intensive care paramedic, Peter was called to assist in the recovery.
And then the numbers just kept on going up and up and up, to the point where, until I got down there, I still didn't know the full extent of the devastation that was down there.
Like many others who responded that day, he's been crippled by post-traumatic stress ever since, haunted by unfathomable scenes firmly etched into his memory.
It starts to come home and bite.
Still has left a dreadful stain on the history of the state.
The trauma only eased by the rapid response of one man.
Which can only be effectively implemented in the interest of the overall national good. I'm sorry about that, but there is no other way.
I understood their argument, but I knew that unless a blanket ban were brought about, we wouldn't achieve our goal of producing a safer Australia.
Within days, John Howard, who'd only been in the top job for 6 weeks, announced sweeping changes to Australia's gun laws. All states and territories signed a national firearms agreement. The centrepiece was a ban on automatic and semi-automatic weapons and a buyback scheme which saw more than 650,000 guns surrendered.
I do know that it was the right thing, and I do know that it has made our country safer. And I do know that to this day, a quarter of a century later, people still remember it and they still thank me for it.
Tony Rundle, who was also very new to the Premier's seat, recounts how those across the political divide united.
They were all acting very responsible, and the legislation went through with unanimous support. And so that's a very rare event in politics.
Gun control advocates say the reforms were a crucial turning point for the country.
We saw a change for the better in the culture of firearm use and ownership in Australia. It was well overdue because by 1996, Australia was having one mass shooting on average each year.
Rebecca Peters spent many tireless years in the 90s campaigning for stronger rules on ownership.
The families of the Port Arthur victims know that their relatives' lives have been commemorated in the gun laws that are keeping other people safe, that are saving about 200 lives a year. So that's about 5,000 lives a year in total have been saved by these gun laws.
But attempts have been made over the years to water down legislation.
I think it betrays the victims of Port Arthur. These people don't have a voice.
The deaths of their loved ones is not entirely in vain, because out of it we have produced a safer country. And I hope that all Australian leaders now and in the future will make sure that that big step forward is never weakened.
Letitia Wallace, 7 Tasmania News.
With the state election only 3 days away, health dominated the campaign trail today, with Labor promising new palliative care beds in a bid to prevent Tasmanians from dying in the emergency room, while the Liberal Party has spruiked its plan to help local businesses.
The Liberal Party hoping to slide into an election win, promoting a business charter helping Tasmanian companies access government services.
We really want to make sure we can maximise the potential for Tasmanian businesses to be able to be supported by providing services to the government.
But health dominated the campaign trail, the Premier saying business is the bread and butter of the economy.
A strong economy is what underpins the record levels of funding that we're putting into health.
Peter Gutwin also responding to reports a patient at the Royal Hobart Hospital was given a bucket to use for a toilet.
I haven't heard that. Obviously that's a matter that is not acceptable. And I accept that we do have to do better.
Labor promising $5 million for 10 palliative care beds in the state's north.
Ultimately, most people who are dying, who cannot die at home, end up here in the emergency department.
There aren't enough dedicated palliative care beds, and we know that there are people, sadly, who are dying in the back of ambulances or in our emergency department because they haven't got access to the specialist care they deserve.
It comes as the Australian Nursing and Midwifery Federation calls for more nurses to be employed to fill skyrocketing vacancies at our hospitals.
We see nurses and midwives working more overtime and more double shifts. We need to make sure that we get baseline staffing right.
Meanwhile, the Liberals also pledged winter energy bill relief and funding for a no-interest loan scheme, a policy it hopes will bowl over voters.
$25 per household for concession card holders, and this will go to those that need it.
The environment has been a key issue for the Greens, calling for an independent environmental protection agency, which it says doesn't put the needs of industry above nature.
We believe Tasmanians want to see an EPA with teeth, an agency that's independent and does its job of looking after the environment.
Elizabeth O'Neill, 7 Tasmania News.
Hundreds of people have gathered in Hobart's Town Hall to raise concerns over the expansion of the state's salmon industry. Louise Cherry resigned from the Marine Farming Planning Review panel when it approved an expansion into Storm Bay, despite her concerns over a lack of proper procedure and science. Today, she spoke about her experiences.
Not wanting to put either of our reputations on the line by being involved in such an abominable decision.
The Primary Industries Minister says the government supports sustainable industry growth. Tasmania's COVID restrictions specific to Western Australian cases have been lifted. Anyone in hotel or home isolation will be notified by Public Health about when they can once again move about freely. It means quarantine-free travel is now restored between the two states. And in the AFL, North Melbourne has the green light to kick off at Blunston Arena on Sunday after spending time in a now cleared Perth red zone. Almost $1.5 billion worth of property was sold in Tasmania in the past quarter, the strongest surge since 2002. New data from the Real Estate Institute shows house prices in the state are up 14% on last year, the largest growth in the past 12 months seen in the northwest, with the median price rising by more than a quarter. The boost has been led by locals, with just 15% of sales from interstate buyers. Investigations are underway after hundreds of short-tailed shearwater carcasses were found at Cameron Bay near Berrydale. Also known as the mutton bird, the Parks and Wildlife Department believe the birds may have been illegally poached and killed.
People cannot take mutton birds from any rookeries on the main island of Tasmania at the moment, and any of those other rookeries that are not on the mainland in some of the islands, you need a licence before you can take them.
It only takes a few people to do the wrong thing to literally impact an entire species in a case like this.
Tasmania Police is assisting with investigations, and wildlife rangers are urging anyone with information to come forward. The countdown is on for the annual City to Casino Fun Run, with thousands of athletes already signing up for the iconic event. After last year's race was cancelled by COVID, a bumper crowd is expected this year. Runners and walkers of all fitness levels are now preparing to test their skills, with many returning to the Hobart tradition.
I've done the event since I was very young, so I've done the 2K, progressed to the 7, and this is my first year tackling the 11K, so I'm really excited.
We have 1,300 registered athletes already, which is a good sign almost 3 weeks out. So I'm hoping that I think we'll get 3,000 people, which will be fantastic.
The race will kick off at 8 a.m. on Sunday, May 16. Tasrail has emblazoned one of its trains with the Speak Up, Stay Chatty logo, calling it the state's largest mobile billboard. The train, unveiled today, will be used to spread the mental health message ahead of the industry's own Are You OK Day tomorrow.
This train will transit throughout the whole state. It'll be everywhere from Hobart, Brighton, right through to Burnie, via Launceston and Devonport, and even as far up as Bell Bay.
We feel that we've got a really prominent logo out there, and our messages are really prominent around checking in on yourself and also those around you. And we do the work we do so that we can get as many people to learn about us and our key messages, and therefore be comfortable to have a conversation or talk about mental health.
They're asking for anyone who sees the trains to check in with themselves and the people around them. Tasmanian guide dog handlers are reporting discrimination, despite it being illegal to refuse service because of a four-legged companion. Advocates say despite widespread understanding, there needs to be more education to ensure the vision impaired are treated fairly.
Rob White has been a guide dog handler for 12 years. Discrimination is still something he faces.
I was going out to get some lunch with the family, and a taxi pulled up and said, no dog, and then drove off, and I felt really frustrated.
Many handlers still suffer problems in restaurants and cafes, despite it being illegal for a business to refuse service because of a guide dog.
In that case, I just wanted to go out and get my family some lunch as a parent of 4, and I feel that I've got the right to do that and to make that decision, and to have barriers in place out of my controls. It's upsetting.
We're very lucky in Tasmania that we have a very good Tasmanian population that accept guide dogs. In saying that, rarely there are some instances of discrimination and refusal.
Today is International Guide Dogs Day. Organisations using the chance to educate the public on the rights of handlers and their dogs.
Guide dogs are clean, they're non-aggressive, they're very obedient. Basically, you don't even know they're there often when they go to cafes and restaurants, and they have the legal rights.
As well as raising awareness for the organisation itself, which makes a huge difference to lives.
Having a guide dog gives me the freedom and independence to be able to get around a lot faster, takes out a lot of that hard work. The dog does the heavy lifting for you.
Josh Duggan, 7 Tasmania News.
They survived a crash landing in a paddock and used to drop instructions from their plane to fishing boats searching for a catch below. Today, the adrenaline-filled lives of Jeff and Beth Martin took a back seat as the couple celebrated their platinum anniversary, 70 years of happy marriage.
Beth Martin says she never wanted to be a white dress bride. Pink was the colour of choice for her wedding 70 years ago today.
We've done a lot
in our life, haven't we?
Perhaps the dress colour hinted at a union unafraid to push the boundaries. Before the days of radio between air and sea, the couple would fly high above fishing trawlers, helping them find their catch.
My wife had to draw a plan and would put the plan in a bottle and drop down to the boat.
You might think their passion for motorbikes would present the biggest risks, but a flight to a sick aunt nearly turned to tragedy when someone milked the fuel out of their plane.
Come down in the paddock and it wasn't quite long enough, so I had to hop over a fence into the next paddock, which was full of cows.
From meeting Dame Margot Fontaine to being billy cart champions, their 70th anniversary was a moment to reflect.
Our life hasn't been boring.
Not in any way, no.
Often asked in a moment like this, what's the secret to a long and happy marriage? The Riverside couple's answer is simple: open and honest communication.
Not many arguments. And if we had an argument, we'd talk it over before we went to bed.
Sound advice at any stage of life. Tom Johnson, 7 Tasmania News. The Northwest Thunder will be missing 5 players to state team duties in this weekend's tough road trip to Frankston. The coach is trying to put the weekend's nail-biting loss in overtime behind him. The 3 points were like 3 daggers through the heart of Thunder fans, but those closing seconds are now behind coach Nick Haywood.
To get to overtime with them and lose on the buzzer, I was really proud of how the boys went, and yeah, it gives us a bit of faith that we can compete against the big dogs.
Taron Armstrong was among those making highlights in the game, but he'll be among a handful of Thunder players out for the Under-20 National Championships. Sire Deans will also be missing against Frankston.
Championship favourites, they're absolutely loaded, but yeah, we're going in as underdogs and the boys are really excited.
Haywood says the basketball boom of NBL games has helped the local product.
At our game on Saturday night, there were, I suppose, more kids than there have been in the past, pretty excited about just basketball in general.
Richie Port's tour to Romandie has begun in Switzerland, with Port sitting in 3rd after last night's prologue. Demanding an explosive sprint, riders charged through 2 time trials, covering just 4 kilometres, ending with a steep climb to the finish. Fellow Aussie and teammate Rowan Dennis clocked the fastest time, 9 seconds quicker than Port. And Punjab Kings paceman Riley Meredith, along with Tasmanian coaches Damien Wright and Adam Griffith, remain in India and plan to see out the IPL season. The BCCI says it will help players fly home after the tournament.
Good evening. Hobart's 19 was as good as it got today. Launceston and Devonport 17, Burnie a high of 15 degrees. St Helens and Friendly Beaches 18 today, Grove and Bushy Park 17, Smithton, Low Head and the Islands 16, Strawn 15. Widespread cloud across the state, bringing light showers to the west. The north cops some early fog. Areas of cloud to our west indicate a weak front, just a smattering of cloud over parts of the mainland, which was generally cloud-free. Tomorrow the high tracks eastwards as a cold front starts its journey across the bight. West to northwesterly winds up to 20 knots will tend more northeasterly during the afternoon and become variable in the evening. Hobart expecting 20 tomorrow with a light shower or 2. Showers for Cygnet 19, 20 the high for New Norfolk with a light shower. 21 for Launceston, early fog again, partly cloudy for Devonport 19 and 20 the high for Campbelltown. Burnie a top of 18 and partly cloudy, a shower for Strawn 17, a light shower for Smithton 19 the maximum. St Helens tomorrow, mostly sunny 21 degrees. Early fog, but fine for Fingal and 21 as well and 20 for Swansea. On Friday, morning fog and then fine with light winds. Morning fog on Saturday, then fine until a shower develops over the northwest, and on Sunday fine over the east with possible showers elsewhere. 20 in Hobart for the North Melbourne Kangaroos return to Blunston Arena. Showers increasing in Perth. Sunny in Adelaide and Melbourne, sunny with periods of smoke haze over Sydney. A shower expected in Brisbane, 25 the top, and a sunny 33 in Darwin. Cloudy in Hobart, it's 14, partly cloudy in Launceston 11 and mostly cloudy in Devonport, currently 13 degrees. And due to the fact that there's no more script there for me to read, Kim, that's all I have for you.
You can go home. Thank you very much.